Did you know that the foods you are eating could be keeping you up in the middle of the night? Let's dive into it. So, your blood sugar is extremely important for you to not only fall asleep, but to stay asleep throughout the night. And if you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night or having no energy throughout the daytime, it could be that you are not getting proper sleep because your body is riding this roller coaster that is full of cortisol, insulin, inflammation, and everything that is way out of its comfort zone. So let's dive into it. Now, one thing you have to understand is like, what is blood sugar? Well, blood sugar is a form of glucose. There's different forms of sugar. There's fructose, glucose, and all these different things. But just think of it as a basic form of sugar that's inside of our body. Now, this kind of sugar inside of our body actually gives us energy. It makes us feel good. It's also why when we go for a sugary dessert, a sugary drink, we feel energy temporarily, but that which comes up must come down. And the same thing applies to anything that we eat throughout the day, especially the last meal before we go to bed. So if we are throughout the daytime eating sugary things, it is going to cause our blood sugar to go up. And then as a result, our blood sugar is going to go down at the same time. Now, why does this happen exactly? Well, when our blood sugar goes up, our body has to sound the alarm bells, and it's always trying to regulate it between a +1 and a -1 state. But all of a sudden, if it goes to +2, -2, +3, -3, +4, -4, and so on, it's way out of our body's comfort zone and way more than it can handle. So now all these fighters are coming in to really try and bring it down, our blood sugar, to try and regulate it back to that zero state. Or if it's too low, it's trying to bring it back up. So if our blood sugar is too high, what causes it to go down? Well, it's known as something known as insulin. Now, somebody who's diabetic doesn't produce enough insulin, and this is where it can get dangerous for them. But, for the average person whose blood sugar is spiked, the proper response for our body is our pancreas will secrete insulin to bring that blood sugar back down. Now, if our blood sugar goes down, it's using resources of our body, which consequently is actually using energy for our body. Now, if our blood sugar goes too low because it was too high, now it's too low and it's going to cause us to have low energy. Now, when the blood sugar is lower, how do we bring it back up? Well, it's known as something known as cortisol, which is known as our stress hormone. Cortisol is good if it is used at the right times. But imagine if we were secreting the cortisol stress hormone way more than our body is used to. It is just going to cause us to feel stress. It is going to cause our body to sound the alarm bells. It is also known as something known as our sympathetic nervous system, where it is sort of in this fight or flight mode, or at least that is part of it. And so when that happens, it is way out of our body's typical range that it is used to. And you can see it right here. We should be within this little orange area wavelength. But what happens when we're just eating sugary foods all the time, it's going up, coming down, going up, coming down, way more than it is actually used to. But how does it actually affect our sleep at the same time? Well, you have to think of our cortisol in this separate graph. Is our cortisol should be highest first thing in the morning, just like you see here. Cortisol is good. It gives us energy. It makes us feel good when we wake up. But as the day goes on, our cortisol level should be going down to right before we go to sleep when it's at its lowest point. But this isn't a perfect world. This is where the issue happens, is where that rhythm can actually flip. So now first thing in the morning, our cortisol levels are lower than they should be. And then at nighttime, maybe they're jacked up. And this is going to cause us to feel that wired but tired feeling. And this is where it all comes back into blood sugar, because when our cortisol isn't working as it should, and it's not regulating on the proper rhythm, it is going to cause insulin resistance when we combine a lot of this blood sugar spiking and the blood sugar to crash. And this leads to desensitization to insulin. This is a lot of the time with diabetics, where we have insulin inside of our blood, but it is our cells that actually absorb it. What if we do not have the receptors on our cell to absorb this insulin? This is where we can start to run into issues. It's also known as if we get hypoglycemic, where our blood sugar, we have a desensitization, where it's in that functional range. It's not so much like a disease state like a diabetic, but it still can cause us issues. And again, just like the blood sugar roller coaster, when it's going up and down too much during nighttime, if our blood sugar spikes before we go to sleep or while we're sleeping, and then it starts to crash and go too low, what is going to compensate for that? It's going to be cortisol. We want our cortisol just like I showed right in this graph, to be lowest right before we go to sleep, and also while we sleep at the same time. But if our cortisol starts to go up while we sleep, it is going to cause us to wake up in the middle of the night because cortisol is stimulatory. It'll be cortisol, adrenaline, and all the stimulatory hormones that we do not want while we sleep. We want to be relaxed. We want to be rested so we can feel fully restored the next day. And so that's why when we're not aligned to our body's natural rhythms, this is where some of these issues can start to happen. Also, not eating the right things at the right times. If we're eating a sugary dessert in the afternoon versus right before we go to bed, if we eat it right before we go to bed, it is going to impact us more compared to if we go to sleep. And I'm going to tell you exactly what you can do about it in just 1 second. Also, less when we sleep less. So if we're getting these constant cortisol and adrenaline spikes while we sleep because of this blood sugar roller coaster we're exposing our bodies to, it is going to cause us to feel lethargic. And there's two hormones that are responsible for our hunger. They're known as leptin and ghrelin. And if we are not sleeping properly, it is going to cause these things to fluctuate and go off by up to 30%. Now, this is massive because it is going to cause us to have these sugary cravings when our body doesn't even really need it. Our sugar cravings are going to be way more. We're going to be craving junk food, sugary things, things full of grease, things that are just not good for our body. That is going to cause us to have even less energy, more brain fog, and want to go towards more stimulants such as coffee, which will just increase our cortisol and our adrenaline even more. And so that's why if we can have the right foods at the right times, at the right timings, then we can be just in a much better place. So exactly what can we do about it? We just touched a much higher level view. We can go way deeper on these things. I just wanted to give you a quick actionable steps that you can do to minimize your midnight awakenings or getting to sleep that you might be having issues in by doing these simple steps to do with your diet. So number one is try not to skip meals. Now, intermittent fasting in the morning is good for some people, but just remember that intermittent fasting is actually a stress on our body that can cause it to go up. This is a video for another time, but if our hormonal profile is in a catabolic state, meaning if it is breaking down more than it is building up, and it's just in this stressful mode, and we can see on a lab test that their cortisol level some is low, we can see the rhythm is not there, and everything is just out of whack, it is very difficult for those people to handle intermittent fasting versus somebody who is more healthy, they're more vibrant, their hormone levels are good, everything is functioning as it should. It's +1, -1, not +2, +3, +4, and the plus and minus with this roller coaster is running. They can handle that a lot better. So just keep in mind, where do you stand in that? And the best way to test is obviously lab testing, and I love doing that with clients, but also it's just how you feel. Try journaling and see when you fast, do you feel hungry? Do you get energy crashes? It will take some time to adapt for you, but try and keep that observation in mind. Number two, we want to start your day with high quality breakfast of fats and protein. So this could be, for example, like a free range egg, especially making sure that we cook the yolks if we do it fried. We don't overcook it. We can get more nutrients if it's done over easy, especially if we have a sensitivity to eggs. It is a very good way to do it. And you can combine eggs because it has high sources of choline, which is very good for our brain, with high quality nuts. It could be an avocado. Even if you get good sources of bacon or sausage, these can be really good in the morning. Now, alternate between if you're fasting or if you are consuming breakfast. Maybe on less stressful days, for example, the weekend where you're not doing much, your body does not need much nutrients, because when we use brain power while we are working, we are going to be using a lot of these calories and nutrients and micronutrients that we need. So maybe on more stressful days, you have to wake up early, you have a lot of things to do in the morning and the afternoon. Maybe you want to have a more nutrient dense breakfast and just experiment and see what feels best for you. Number three, we want to ensure every meal contains proteins, carbs, and fats. And the reason for this is because we always want to have a balanced meal, but each of these macro overall nutrients contain a sole responsibility. So proteins provide the building blocks for our neurotransmitters for us to think properly. Carbohydrates are very important for our hormones, and fats also very important. The good forms of fat, not trans fat and some of these fast food greasy forms of fat. Things, for example, like olive oil, fish oil, removing the canola oil, the vegetable oil, all that stuff is just complete garbage for you. You do not want it. It is truly toxin for your body. Avocado oil, avocados, nuts, fish, sardines, salmon, tuna. These are all very good sources. Number four, Avoid sugary juices and dried fruit. Now, a lot of people don't realize this. They think soda is one of the worst things that you can consume because the sugary content's so high. But equally, fruit juices and dried fruit are extremely high in sugar. They are not good for you. It goes directly into your liver, and your body is just not used to it. I mean, just the concentration per serving of some of these fruit juices is extremely high. With some clients that I work with, once we remove some of these things, even though they thought they were following a healthy diet, once we remove the fruit juices or dried fruit, everything just starts to work out better for them. Number 5, we want to eat until we are full. Now, we don't want to be so full where you feel like, you have to undo your pant button, but just eat enough where you feel satiated, meaning you feel full and you feel good for the next 3 to 4 hours. If you find yourself hungry after you eat 3 to 4 hours later, chances are you did not eat enough, in which case try and up the carbohydrates if it's a clean source and healthy source of carbohydrates. Number 6, and this is one of my favorite, is we can add cinnamon to our meals. And cinnamon is one of my favorites, and they show scientifically to really help bring your blood sugar levels down, or at least monitor it. So some things you can try is cut up apples with cinnamon. You can put on a sweet potato with MCT oil, and cinnamon is really good. Things that you can add on a consistent basis. Think of those things that you can add cinnamon to. Great way to start. Number 7, move after each meal. That one's pretty self-explanatory. After we move after each meal, we're able to reduce and regulate our blood sugar, even if it's for 5 minutes, they show. An interesting study showed even if somebody is rocking their foot up and down, this had beneficial effects on our body's blood sugar levels overall. But go outside for a walk. Go for a 10-15 minute walk if you can. Not too stimulatory before bedtime, but after dinner, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's healthy and it can actually help you sleep better. Number 8, we want to combine healthy sources of fat with each meal. Now, we touched on this already, but it is so important that I just wanted to say that again, especially with dinner time. If before we go to sleep, we can combine, for example, like a tablespoon of cashew butter, almond butter, even honey. Honey we'll touch on in another episode, is very helpful to stabilize our blood sugar while we go to sleep. You could also put in some cinnamon with that. If you can sparkle any of that on, will be very beneficial while you sleep. Number 9, again, because it's so important, eat until you're full. And number 10, avoid heavy meals 3 to 4 hours before bedtime. So let's say you go to bed at the average time, let's say 10, 11 p.m. Try and have your last meal by 6, 6:30, 7 p.m. at the latest. One thing you may find, if you eat close to bedtime before the 3 or 4 hour window, it negatively impacts your sleep, especially if you have a sleep tracker, an Oura Ring, and an Apple Watch. You can actually see those stats change in real time. And that is one thing that you want to experiment and see if that impacts you as well. So that's everything here. Again, this is from a very high level view. If you would like to learn more about how to track your sleep, energy level, stress, focus, join our weekly newsletter below right here. Go to the website, go to the newsletter. Everything is inside of there. But if you would like to go even deeper with all of this stuff, you want to see, what should I be eating at the right times? Is what I'm eating okay, or should I be switching it up a little bit? If you want something that is more custom tailored to you, you can schedule a one-on-one assessment directly with me, where we will dive into what your situation is, where your current challenges are, what your ultimate goals are, and I'll be here to help you get there as quickly as possible. Again, it's Riley here signing out. I hope you have a great week ahead, and don't forget to subscribe down below. We'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.